Welcome back to Riders of the Dawn.
I'm Jay.
This is Stu.
And maybe live for the last time from the car.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you know.
I occasionally get these people that ask what happened to the podcast, and the answer is we don't have a commute together anymore.
Yeah.
So we used to record the podcast on our way to work. We worked at the same place. And so it made sense. Like, we've got like 35 minutes of downtime. Let's record some.
Be productive.
Yeah, let's be productive. So that's where the podcast came from. Other people started that way. There's YouTubers that started by just recording videos on their commutes. And so we kind of started the same way. But since we don't have that commute, we didn't really find that much to do together after we finished that commute. I think we did a couple video reviews.
Yeah, and those were fun.
Yeah, those were fun. And that's probably what we want to be doing going forward.
Yeah.
So I guess this video is a little bit about the shift in direction, or
yeah. Well,
what's going to be happening with Riders of the Dawn.
Yeah, I think one big thing we're more interested in, if we think of the first set of Riders of the Dawn episodes as like a season. Season 1 was like about business and mindset.
Yeah.
And I think if we call this season 2, this is going to be more about like us being fans of the things that we love.
Yeah.
And
so
also being...
It's a Star Trek podcast.
Yeah, it's a Star Trek podcast, like always. So we're talking about doing things more about gaming, talking more about game design, which we talked about quite a bit in season 1.
Yeah, but we've since done even more with that. So there's even more to talk about.
And really, I love reading books. I like talking about books.
Yeah. I like writing books.
I like writing books too. But also, we love playing games. So getting more into gaming and like game theory and what makes audiences play games. So I think there'll still be some businessy stuff. There'll still be plenty of mindset, I think. But
mindset is key. Like if you're having problems, it's mostly mindset, and I've kind of figured that out in the last few weeks. You always go back, oh yeah, it's the problem with the execution is in the way you conceive of it.
Yeah.
Often that is the case.
We've spitballed this quite a bit over the last couple weeks, and I think we found a balance that will be fun. We're going to try and do, I don't know, at least something once a week.
Yeah, at least the once a week thing. We'll be experimenting with different pieces of content. Mostly we just want to spend time talking about the stuff we love, and less time complaining.
Yeah. Less
time talking about little technical things. Technical stuff always pops up, but
you might have seen on Twitter last week that I was like, holy moly, we're recording a Riders of the Dawn podcast. Well, we did, and then we decided that that's just not the direction we wanted to go anymore.
Yeah, when we were done with the recording, we decided that it wasn't what we wanted to do, and it didn't represent what we wanted to do going forward, and it didn't, wasn't going to talk to the people we want to talk to. That's a big one. Is if you look at the person on the other side, you look at your audience as a person you're talking to. Part of finding your audience is talking to the people that you actually want to be talking to, and not the people you don't want to be talking to. So when it comes to making content, and this is true for anyone that's listening to this and is wanting to make content out in the infosphere, you have to think about who you want your audience to be and what you're really going to be saying to them.
And if they're receptive to what you're saying.
Yeah, if they're receptive to what you're saying. Yeah, I think that's pretty easy to figure out for the most part. But you'd be surprised how many times you can... Yeah, I've done it many times over the course of my YouTube career, is crossed my purposes. Talked about one set of things that my audience wasn't interested in, or talked about a set of things that the audience was interested in, but not in the way that they were interested in having it presented, or something that they don't like that I happen to be talking about. You have to figure out how you want to deal with that. So, just as an example, if you have a podcast that focuses on Magic the Gathering, and you spend a lot of time talking about how bad Magic the Gathering is as a game, it might be crossing purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you don't like Magic the Gathering, you probably shouldn't be doing the Magic the Gathering podcast.
Yeah.
But even if it comes to something like Dungeons and Dragons has a huge amount of different varieties. There's AD&D, and you can play 1.0 if you're particularly masochistic. But even me expressing that, someone's going to be like, well, I like D&D 1.0, and you guys are noobs, right? So, I don't know. It just depends how you want to do it. So we really want to talk about the things that we like.
Yeah. And I think permadeath is awesome, by the way.
Yeah, but I think permadeath is great. And 1.0 was set up...
Tangential.
Yeah. 1.0 was set up with permadeath in mind. So, if your character died, you just rolled another one. And the level scaling wasn't as extreme as most RPGs. It's like a level 10 Warlock had more spells and abilities available. It wasn't like massively more survivable than a level 1. But part of the problem with if you're doing 1.0 is you're rolling your stats. You could get characters that had like 2 HP. And because it was random. So you could end up with really weak characters. Or you might have the characters like, I rolled straight 18s across the board.
I played with a guy recently who did that. We called him the Ubermensch, and he was unkillable, and it made the game boring. The game was no fun.
Yeah, and that was the thing. It's like, oh, you died. It's like, okay, so how do I get resurrected? It's like, there's no resurrection in this game.
You're dead. This is like real life.
It's like, cast redemption on me.
Why didn't you DI yourself?
Paladin, why didn't you DI yourself? Is Divine Intervention a spell anymore?
No, it hasn't been a spell for I think since Burning Lich King.
Really? They took it out in Lich King?
Yeah, it took a long time.
Yeah, because I remember that being such a great...
Of course, we went from D&D into World of Warcraft, so...
just go up and see what you could do. If you really wanted to troll someone would go out there and be engaging Doomlord Kazakh. You'd go up and you would DI yourself onto the tank, and he would wipe the raid.
Yep.
And then you'd just be another dead body among many, but you didn't suffer durability loss. And that means you win. That was winning. Winning back in the day. So you get the guards to kill him, and he loses money.
Yes.
It's the only way that you can win at the PvP game. Is to make your opponent suffer.
So I think
we're talking about video games more too.
Yeah, video games. We're not explicitly marketing video games, so there's not a lot of tips we're handing out. But as consumers, we know how we act and consume a lot of video games. We definitely critique video game story quite a bit. Usually, I think there's too much.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic all on its own. That it might be its own show. It's like, to me, narrative and choice are in opposition to one another.
Yeah.
And chances are, if you think of a game that you think has lots of choice in it, it actually doesn't. What you experience is the illusion of choice, which is fine if you can create a convincing illusion of choice. But in most cases, your choices don't really have an impact on the outcome of the story. Which is fine.
They have an impact up to a point and then it's irrelevant because otherwise the coding is too complicated.
Yeah, it's really easy. You could follow a logic tree. If you make dichotomous decisions within a couple of gameplay points, you have so many different possible endings that you can't possibly keep track of them all. And then if you do allow total player freedom, then the story ends up being really bad because narrative has to happen in a certain way. But anyway, that's probably
frankly that's my biggest complaint about D&D is you've got to have a dungeon master who's willing to be a dick.
Yeah. So in D&D, the contest is between: do you want to have a story in it, or do you want to play a game? Yeah. Because to me, it's play a game. You let the characters play the game, and that's what it is. And if players are like, well, I want to experience a story, it's like, okay, then you have to be okay with not doing a bunch of stuff that you want to. Mm-hmm. You have to go along with what the story says you pretty much ought to do. So if it's like, hey, the tavern keeper wants you to go kill some goblins, you're like, you have to say, yes, I will kill those 50
I want to go drinking with Sally. Roll for initiative.
It's like, I want to pickpocket him. It's like, no. You just say you can't. It's behind the bar.
So those are game philosophy things, and I don't know. I don't think we need to get into in depth with any specific subject with this episode. Just letting you guys know what's going on and where we've been and what the heck we've been doing.
Yeah, we put out some books.
Yeah, there's some books out.
What's your current one? Immortal Fear?
Immortal Fear.
Some other stuff too, right?
There's some other stuff that's kind of floating around in I'm not happy where it is land. But Immortal Fear's doing good. A lot of really positive feedback on that. And headed back into the school year, going back into the music grind.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun. And what about you, Stu? YouTube's still going pretty hard.
Yeah, I mean, I still have the channel. It's still growing, and I'm enjoying that. It's mostly critique stuff. There's a lot more philosophy that I want to do on it, so I might be writing a nonfiction book later this year and working on that here and there. Got some stories that I'm trying to come out with. Last set of books I came out with at the beginning of the year were Needle Ash, a 3-book series. So you can check out Needle Ash. You can actually get the first one for free as of this recording on Amazon or anywhere. It's free everywhere. And then you can get number 2 for free if you hop on my mailing list. And number 3, you gotta pay me. You gotta pay me if you want to know how the story ends. But it's a good ending. It's a lot of stuff happens at the end. You'll be surprised with. It's a high fantasy novel, military fantasy is actually what I would call it. And people seem to think it's pretty technical with the military part. Maybe not. maybe not. It's how I imagined tactics would work in that particular environment. Mostly based on like 14th and 15th century northern Italian and Gothic warfare. So
that's
pretty fun.
That's kind of interesting. I'll bring up that if you have bought one of my books, they're all listed under Matthew J. Wellman. On the podcast, I call myself Jay, but I realized very recently that I hate being called Matthew, so right now I'm undergoing the process of scrubbing that pen name and just going by Matt Wellman. So
that's a thought. I mean, I've thought about
look for that.
Pen names. I've thought about, like, should I have a pen name? And maybe if I could go back and do it again, maybe I would. But my brand is David B. Stewart. I usually go by Stu because there's always a billion Davids in every single room. Yeah. And I also don't really like the name David, and I really don't like Dave. So when people call me Dave, I'm just like, you don't know me.
You don't know me.
I do not like being called Dave. Dave is too... I don't like the way it sounds. But I've never really liked David either. It doesn't... it's a Hebrew name. I'm not Hebrew. This doesn't really, reflect me in any way. It's just the name my parents picked out for me, which I guess it's everyone, So, I don't know. I've always gone by Stu. I've gone by Stu for a long time, and other nicknames like Fidel, if you go far enough back. And that's
for
just because
10 years, man, you go by Stu.
Yeah, it's just there's always a million Davids in the room, so why go by David? It's like if your name is John, you're usually gonna be middle name. Or you could be like Nolan Ryan and go by Nolan because your first name's Lynn. So you got a girl's name, boy named Sue.
So, in the future, you will be able to find me at mattwellmanwrites.com. I'm also working on a new story review platform called Storyboard, but B-O-R-E-D. That'll be on YouTube and at fantasy-story-board.com.
Yeah, you're registered in all kinds of stuff. Find me at dbspress.com, which is my main, where you can read writing, and you can find links to all my books and samples of those, including my current nonfiction series, which is on proper thinking, logic, and fallacies, and those sorts of things. I just came out with an article called The Error of Addition, which is a very common thinking error, where you add context to information to make it make sense, but that changes the nature of the information. In a way, it's an error. So I'll probably have a whole book of those eventually this year. I've kind of felt called to do a nonfiction book. But I will still have fiction stuff coming out. DavidVStewart.com has links to all my other stuff, including my album that I came out with last year under David V. Stewart's Zool. Find that at zoolonline.com. You can listen to the album for free. It's instrumental rock. I don't know what I don't want to go too much further than that. It's kind of ambient rock, but there's progressive elements, there's jazz elements in it. So it's mostly just me sitting in my office playing music. That's what it is. It's all me.
Artwork by David V. Stewart.
Yeah, I did all the artwork. Roan, my son, plays drums on a couple songs, and one song features Chad Rosser, a bass player. We did a little collaboration. So I chose Zool as the name of the band because it's a raven from one of my books, but also I can have anyone play with me, and it could still be that name.
That's right.
Rather than
like Avantasia.
Tobias Sammet's Avantasia.
Oh, well. He could still have anybody play with him.
I know, but it's still Tobias Sammet's Avantasia.
So, all right. Well,
featuring Kai Hansen.
I think that's we can cut that there.
All right. So we'll see you next time. And this is Stu.
This is Jay.
Bye bye.